Good evening and welcome to my How Healthy Are You weekly conference call. My name is Dr. Thomas Brewer. I'm a PhD chemist. And before I get started on this week's topic, I wanted to do a quick follow-up to last week's call where I talked about circadian rhythms and bioclocks and our body's ability to want certain things at certain times, especially food, but the body knows what's coming, and when you link the main body clock in the brain with what's going on outside of the body, good things happen. Well, I got some questions from people that do something called shift work, where they end up being awake at night and they have to sleep either in the afternoon or early in the morning. The problem with shift working is it immediately results in a little higher blood pressure and a little more risk in diabetes, because we're really not designed to eat in the dark. We're definitely not designed to eat at night. So my advice for shift workers is to switch your eating to before you go into work and after you get home as much as possible. It may not be 100%, but it will at least help. The other thing, while we're talking about when you eat, studies were done that link whether you eat on a regular eating schedule, meaning you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner at roughly the same time, or a completely randomized irregular eating schedule. And it turns out the people that eat at irregular times, different times every day, they had slightly higher cholesterol, slightly higher blood sugar, and slightly lower calorie burning, meaning there was a greater propensity for them to store fat. It was all very, very slight, but it's usually best to eat at some sort of a predictable interval, and the body's clocks then expect the food, and so they can continue to burn calories because they know a meal is coming. So it's kind of clever how the various organs in the body and the main clock in the body and the brain will actually function differently once it gets on a schedule. And so schedules are good for our bodies. All right, that was the first thing I wanted to do as a follow-up. We also had a question from last week's call about nutritional yeast flakes, and I didn't know much about this food. It turns out to be absolutely great. It is more known to people that are vegetarian or vegan because it is a great way for them to get a vitamin that's usually lacking, and that's vitamin B12. So this is a great way for vegetarians and vegans to get vitamin B12. These yeast flakes have about 8 grams of protein per serving. Again, really great for a non-meat or non-egg-based food. The one that I looked up was Bob's Red Mill brand, but there are other brands. But I learned something from this, and it's something I'll add to my repertoire. It should be easy to find in grocery stores, because usually Bob's Red Mill has a whole section of maybe 20 or 30 different products, all made by this one company. All right. The other question that prompted this week's topic was about lymph. And when I look at someone's blood under the microscope, sometimes I'll mention about the white blood cells and how they're not living cells. They are made in the bone marrow, so they don't self-replicate like a living organism, so they're not living cells. But I'll also mention that they leave the body through the lymph or the lymphatic system without going into much more detail. So this was a good question to follow up on for this week's conference call. So lymph is a pretty much colorless fluid, and the reason it's called lymph is it mainly contains a certain type of white blood cell called a lymphocyte. And these lymphocytes are really good at attacking bacteria. Now, there's another special lymphocyte called a T-cell lymphocyte, and that's especially good at attacking cancerous cells in the body. Well, this lymph, which has white blood cells and it's very thin, it essentially bathes over our tissues and organs, and then it goes back into the bloodstream. So lymph has its own little circulatory system. So we have our blood circulatory system where the pump is the heart. And so our heart pumps the blood through our body, and then the blood has to have enough pressure to get into the capillaries, which are very small veins essentially. So there must be a lot of pressure from the heart to get the blood into the capillaries. And from there, the very thin part of the blood, which will have some white cells, but it'll be the fluid, the plasma, then goes into a second system called this lymphatic system. But the lymphatic system doesn't have its own pump. It essentially is a subsystem of our blood circulatory system. So the lymph system does its job killing various types of bacteria around our organs, and then it goes back to our blood. So it's sort of an assist for our blood circulatory system. So the whole point of the lymphatic system is to get rid of toxins. When we're always getting toxins into our body, there's just no way around it. So the lymphatic system has something called nodes, and the nodes are the best way, or the closest things essentially to a pump like the heart, but they're not quite. And the nodes can get blocked, and that's when problems occur. Typically, the nodes are in the neck, the armpits, and the groin. So neck and armpits, very common, very easy to feel for. In fact, you may have noticed doctors feeling around your neck during a physical, and that's what they're doing, is they're looking for swollen lymph nodes. And often if they're swollen, all you need to do is just get the lymph moving again, because the nodes are like a crossroad where everything is getting blocked. So the nodes can be the problem area, the bottleneck, let's say, for lymphatic movement, lymphatic drainage. So the best thing that helps lymph move is to drink plenty of water. Again, we talk about water consumption all the time, but it helps with the lymph movement. But what you can do above that is exercise. So when you move your arms and your legs and your neck, meaning your head, you allow the body to move lymph. So if you can't move a lot, any sort of massage, and you can do that yourself or have somebody give you a massage, will get the lymph moving again and break up any blockage in a node. Now, diet-wise, the best thing is to eat red foods like cherries, and the best one is beets. And I've talked about beets in the past as being very good for our blood and our heart, our blood vessels, because the beets will end up making a gas called nitric oxide. Now, some people will take capsules that I have available because they don't like beets. And so that way they are ensuring that they have nitric oxide in their system every day, which is very good at keeping the blood pressure constant and low, and to keep your blood vessels very healthy. But lymph benefits from eating beets also. So the spleen is considered a lymphatic organ, and that's where, when the white cells are completely finished, that's where they exit the blood and then exit the body. But the spleen is the intermediary. So that's what I had on lymph, and I don't know if we're going to have any questions about it, but I'm going to open up the call to questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments, either about the lymph or the eating? Yeah.
Dr. Brewer, okay,
yeah.
So which of your products would you recommend for someone who has needs lymph drainage?
So it's not as much product related as exercise and movement, but if I'm going to say something for product, if you have swollen lymph nodes, one of the best ways to get rid of inflammation is a good antioxidant. And so the best broad spectrum way of doing that would be the Metabolic Complete. But that's also assuming you're taking enzymes with your meals. So assuming you're already taking enzymes, I would recommend the Metabolic Complete because it lowers inflammation. And if you have swollen lymph nodes, it's a sign of inflammation, obviously. And just simple massage in the swollen area is very beneficial.
Okay. Well, the person who has this, she says that it's very, very painful, and that the doctors have tried to put her on some medications for it, but it's just not doing anything. And so we're just looking for alternate things to do.
Yeah, medication is definitely not the way to go for lymphatic drainage. I mean, physically moving and massaging and touching the muscles works great. I'll give you an example. One way to drain lymph from the neck is to just reach around with your hands so that the side of your thumb, of each thumb, is on the side of your neck. And you just press in with your thumb and ride it down your neck. So it's only going to go down about 4 inches. So you're going to start behind the ears, right at the base of your skull, and you're just pressing in and pushing down and sliding your hand, but the only way to touch is with the inside of your thumb, down the outside of your neck. And you just do that 3, 6, or 9 times, and that helps move lymph out of your neck, and if that's the point where there's blockage. And then the other point is in the armpits, and it's simple. You would just use your fingertips in your armpit and just go around in circles, and do that for about 9 seconds at a time for each side, and that would get the lymph moving in the armpit. And it may take more than one time to do that, and that's something you may need to do a few times a day. But the massage, the movement is what's important. Also, drinking enough water so that this doesn't happen again. It would be another way to encourage lymph to move through the body. And like I said, the foods would be like cherries and beets, and the red foods. But above and beyond that would be the enzymes and metabolic complete. That'd be your two best supplements.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Do we have any other questions?
When you talk about red beets, are you saying they should be raw or cooked, or how?
They're best raw for these benefits. I rarely eat beets raw. I use, like, just by slicing them and putting them on my fork. I put them in a blender along with other fruits and vegetables and make what's called a smoothie. But the raw is much more beneficial for the body. Some produce is better cooked, like tomatoes are better cooked, especially for men, to activate the lycopene. Asparagus has to be cooked, or else the body can't digest it. But pretty much everything else is best raw if you can do that. There's a trade-off when you cook things. You lose some nutrients because they get damaged with the heat, but you also kill the parasites when you cook a fruit or a vegetable. In fact, that's how you protect yourself from any of these health scares from lettuce and vegetables that had some sort of E. coli get onto the vegetable or anything that was growing near the ground. If it's well cooked, then the E. coli is killed, and as well as other parasitic bacteria. But in doing that, you lose a little bit of the enzymatic activity, and the vitamins tend to get slightly damaged, or at least a percentage of them will be damaged. So it's a tough call, how much food to eat that's raw and how much to eat that's cooked. So I recommend a healthy balance between the two. And if you're eating a lot of raw fruits and vegetables, you may need to take a daily probiotic just to keep the probiotic bacteria strong enough to kill any parasites that snuck in with the uncooked fruits and vegetables. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. I hear you talking about red beets different times, and I've wondered if cooked has some of the same benefits, or if it's only the raw stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, when I talk about beets, I'm referring to them raw. That's where you're going to get the most nutrition from a beet.
Okay, thanks.
Both the red part and the green stem.
Okay.
Would you put
So
that
don't throw away the green part of the beet. Did you have another question, Sandra?
I'm sorry. Would you put that in your smoothie in the morning?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, it does.
I usually use a third of the beet, of the red part, the bulb, and a third of the green part, the stem. And that green part is extremely nutritious for a leafy green. And most people throw it away, and that's a shame. But
when you do your newsletter next, would you be able to put some ideas about things to put in the daily smoothies?
Well, I have a smoothie handout, so I can just link it to it.
Oh, that would be great. Okay, perfect.
So I'll do that. And the title of it is Cancer Smoothie, but it's good for everybody. And it also explains how to make any smoothie. So
Perfect.
there are certain rules to make smoothies so that they taste good. So I'll put that in there. I believe I can just link the file.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
I would have one question about a lymph massage or just other like deep tissue massages and stuff like that. If you get really painful afterwards, then some of this small massage stuff that you were talking about could be sort of a patch-up thing for...
Yes. Yeah. It's stuff you can do yourself.
And when you get a whole bunch done to you and then you get painful afterwards, it probably means that something isn't moving quite right.
Yes. So after a massage, you absolutely have to drink lots of water. I also recommend taking an enzyme because it'll help break down the toxins that got released during the massage. A deep tissue massage will release a lot more toxins. And so there's even more need to take enzymes and drink water to break those toxins down so you can eliminate them from the body. Because what we don't want is the toxins to get released and then deposit elsewhere in the body.
Right. Thanks for that idea about the enzymes. I'm not sure that I would have thought about that.
Yeah, because that'll help break down. It'd be just like taking an enzyme at bedtime to break down plaque, cholesterol, and uric acid crystals. It'd be
so you just
really the same.
One or two, or I mean, how do you know how many extra enzymes to take?
I would just do one or two.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. Just
and
like
what's
recommended at bedtime to get rid of crystals and other toxins. So, you just think of after a massage, you're just getting rid of the toxins.
And can you repeat that, like, again the next day if you're still feeling painful?
Yes. And again, this is without food. So this is letting the enzymes get to the blood. So if you take enzymes with food, they're going to digest the meal. But if you take them without food, then they can work directly breaking down toxins in your blood and plaque and other crystals in the blood too.
Now, what happens if you take enzymes with, like, other supplements or even, like, some medications or something?
There shouldn't be what's called a contraindicator with enzymes because it's just like eating food. So the problem would be taking enzymes with any medication that says do not take with food.
Okay.
So then you would not take your enzyme around that medication. But you can pretty much think of the enzymes as being like food. And in this case, fruits and vegetables, which are foods high in enzymes, but I mean, that would be similar. That'd be the similar concept.
I just usually take all the stuff at bedtime that all together, the enzymes and some other stuff that I'm taking from you. And then I also have a little bit of prescription medicine that I have to take, and so maybe I should be putting more space between.
It's very likely you should. I know it's easy to take everything all together, but everything you end up taking as a supplement or a medication does have an optimum time to enter the body. And it's usually linked to either meals or sleep. But I don't recommend taking everything at the same time.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you should be able to improve on that a little bit. Do we have any other questions? Oh, I also wanted to mention that I'm essentially just about full. All of the appointments are taken for my trip to Pennsylvania at the end of May. I may be able to squeeze another person in, but it's essentially full, and I'll go ahead and finalize that trip. But if we don't have any other questions, I wanted to thank everyone for participating, and I'll be doing this call again next week. So good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.